We're live, Senator Sears.
No. Dick, can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, there he goes.
Okay. We are live, Senator Sears.
You're muted, Dick.
Thank you. Yeah, David, thank you for being, is David the first, Peggy?
Senator Sears, sorry to interject. Senator Norris wanted to ask a few questions.
Of you,
Sure.
Senator, for
Yeah.
both my benefit and those who may be viewing into us here, I guess my question is three-part. Prior to beginning this process, my question is, how does an individual candidate or nominee get to this point? What is the process for them to reach this point? And what is our role in Senate Judiciary during this process? If I could get someone to enlighten me.
Well, without legislative counsel going through it, the process is first person applies to the Judicial Nominating Board, which is made up of a group of citizens, members of the bar, members of the legislature, and others appointed by the governor. And then once a number, they have to be deemed qualified by the Judicial Nominating Board. And then the names are sent to the governor, and the governor chooses a person to be the nominee. And they begin serving as soon as the governor has made that decision. But if they're appointed during a session of the legislature, they need to be confirmed before the legislature adjourns by the Senate. And the confirmation process requires the Judiciary Committee to hear from the nominee and any citizens who wish to testify, and also collect any information that is available. And then the committee makes its decision whether to recommend confirmation or not. And to be totally honest, in my 30 plus years here, we have always confirmed the governor's nominees for judges and magistrates. So, but the process is one that has been the key to me has always been the fact that the Judicial Nominating Board has to go through an extensive review before any names even get to the governor.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Senator Sears, do you want to move on to the first witness?
Yes, please.
So, David, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity from the committee. My name is David Slay. On February the 7th, I will have been a practicing Vermont lawyer for 40 years. In the fall of 1983, I became the primary Orleans County public defender and maintained an active criminal defense practice in Orleans ever since. I practiced with various states as adversaries, Phil White, Jane Woodruff, Keith Flynn, Alan Franklin, and Jen Barrett. I've practiced all around the state, have for many years, and have become familiar with literally dozens of prosecutors. I've known Judge Barrett for more than a decade now, I think. She was initially an Orleans County Deputy State's Attorney with whom I dealt from time to time. But she returned when she ran for State's Attorney after a full-term appointed attorney incumbent ran against her. Jennifer won that election handily and then served capably for about 8 years. I can tell you a number of things about Judge Barrett that I think the committee should consider. First of all, she has just an incredible work ethic. She works extraordinarily hard, almost, to my mind, never missed a deadline, never asked for continuances because they weren't ready. And that work ethic, while admirable on its own, is almost more important because it shows enormous respect for the system, for the process, and for the other litigants. And that dedication to her job, I think, is absolutely irrefutable. She has enormous energy and enormous enthusiasm for working in the justice system. The second thing I think that is indisputable is her integrity. Her word is her bond. I've never been misled by her. She never tried to play cheap tricks, never hid the ball. She executed her authority as the chief law enforcement officer in Orleans with complete honesty, candor, and transparency. She's enormously trustworthy. She's also dedicated to a notion of justice. And now, don't get me wrong, she and I have butted heads hard over the years, where I thought her approach to a case might have been something with which I would disagree, and often strongly. But after all, it is an adversary system, and we are adversaries coming from completely different points of view and different goals. If there wasn't that sort of friction from time to time, one or the other of us wouldn't be doing our jobs. But examined from a somewhat more elevated viewpoint, Jen's devotion to justice to the people in Orleans County was unquestionable. Her tenure saw an enormous increase in the number of cases that were sent to diversion and to the restorative justice process, way more than her predecessors. She took the initiative during the pandemic to try to resolve cases where people had been held in pretrial detention and whose trials were delayed because of the shutdown, often engaging in negotiations where she would essentially bid against herself in efforts to resolve cases and get people out from doing dead time. And while we sought somewhat different remedies, I was seeking to have many cases dismissed. She was seeking other remedies, but we joined together to expose what we thought was a recalcitrant and perhaps obfuscating judiciary in our joint effort to try to get jury trials restored in Orleans County after the pandemic. She fought hard to get the courts reopened and to start the justice process going again. And for that, I think she deserves great admiration. She's also very sensitive to the needs of her community. She understands that our clients are often undereducated, underfunded, unsophisticated, and vulnerable. I think she did her level best to try to explain things well to everyone involved in the system, and would take into considerations people's lack of capability and put in context acts that would otherwise be viewed purely as criminal. I've read some of the published comments about her nomination. I think her detractors, quite frankly, some of whom I greatly admire, Ms. Green, who I think is going to testify, and I have worked together on many very serious cases, and she's a very capable lawyer. But it seems to me that the criticisms really reflect their frustration in that Ms. Barrett, Judge Barrett, used tools that the legislature gave to her to try to address specific issues. I think in my written comments, I think it was a mistake years ago to expand the number of cases for which the Vermont now allows the death penalty. And that allows, for the people being held without bail in contravention to the previous assumption that people be released pre-trial. But that's a tool that the legislature considered and gave to prosecutors, and it ostensibly wanted prosecutors to use. In adopting 7553A, the legislature told prosecutors you can seek to hold people who commit violent crimes, whether they have life punishment or not, to hold them without bail. That's a tool the legislature evidently thought was necessary and gave to prosecutors with the hope that they would be used. And so Judge Barrett used those tools. I argued against it. I thought in many cases it was over the top, but it was a tool that she was given by the legislature after the legislature's consideration with particular goals in mind. Whether she used those tools or not to seek people being held without bail or seek harsh sentences or sentences that would be harsh in my view, is certainly part of her job, consistent with how she's been empowered by the legislature. The way to fight back on that is to fight back. And that's what defense lawyers should do. They should go to court ready to argue against the recommended detention or recommended sentence. And in the end, whether it's Judge Barrett using tools given to her by the legislature in a way that defense lawyers find inappropriate a given situation or what have you, it's judges that make the decision to hold people without bail. It's judges that sentence people. It's not, would never be a prosecutor like Judge Barrett was. I think the other thing that has really struck me as disturbing is comments that somehow Judge Barrett's soul is deficient in some way, that she's a racist because her husband over a decade ago had some disciplinary issues. Let me tell you straight up, if my wife was accused with murder, I would do everything in my power to see that she had the best defense possible. That would not make me pro-murder, right? So it's inappropriate, I think, in any situation to say because someone's spouse has done something untoward that the other spouse is personally responsible for the other's action. And in this particular case, when you're holding a woman responsible for her husband's action, there's at least a vague notion of sexism there. The last thing I've seen is somehow people comment that Judge Barrett is somehow a threat to women in general, that she somehow exposes them to some evil in a way that, is beyond question. I know for a fact, I've had young lawyers work in my office who looked up to Judge Barrett as a role model, who would show them that what you could do if you set your mind to it and become a capable and respected lawyer. She was an absolute champion in domestic violence cases, much to my chagrin sometimes, in her sort of zeal to adjudicate and punish people that she thought were guilty of domestic violence cases. And she has been an incredible mentor to female lawyers in her office. So to think that she's somehow a risk to women in general is just beyond the pale. So I suppose I'm rambling a bit, but I would certainly, in sum, say that Judge Barrett is a candidate with incredible zeal, integrity, a sense of devotion to justice, understanding of the community, and a desire to serve her constituency in whatever role she can. And lastly, some of this criticism coming from lawyers is just, it's hard to comprehend. As a defense lawyer, I defend people who are accused of doing terrible things. Again, that doesn't mean I'm in favor of people doing terrible things. The fact that she could use the tools that she was given by the legislature and be an effective, energetic prosecutor is evidence that she understands the roles people occupy in the judicial system. And that would give people confidence that as a judge, she would understand what her role is there, distinct from being a prosecutor, certainly distinct from being a defense lawyer, and indicate rather than contradict the notion that she's fully capable of fair and impartial adjudication of disputes in our legal system. I would recommend her highly and without hesitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. David, and our next witness is Green, Attorney Defender General.
May I sit? Thanks.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Green. I've been a licensed attorney here in Vermont for about 18 years. I've been in private practice and I've always maintained I've mostly done criminal cases, although in private practice I did civil cases as well, civil rights actions, assisted with medical malpractice cases. And I presently work for the Office of the Defender General. I've been there for about 11 years. And there I've maintained a civil and criminal practice as well. I have always had cases in criminal cases in Orleans County. I would like to talk to you about two functions that judges have that I think this candidate cannot perform. The first function is to uphold the law. And I hope this committee is well aware by now, I know it is, about this incident involving an employee at the courthouse in Orleans County who was carrying a gun in violation of law. I know that you are well prepared and have read the article. There's just a few facts I want to point out to you because I heard Judge Barrett's testimony last week. She was divorcing herself from that incident, which is, as a person who is in that courtroom all the time, concerning. According to the article, and I do hope you get the Buildings and Grounds investigation report yourself, a deputy sheriff, Carmen Vizon, who was assigned to work in the state's attorney's office, said that she knew that the man was carrying the gun in the courthouse as soon as she started, and that it was, quote, well known that this employee had a gun with him at work in violation of the law. The gunman himself told investigators that he had a gun and that Attorney Barrett, quote, knew and allowed, unquote, him to carry the gun. I hope the committee asks the candidate, perhaps, when did Deputy Sheriff Vizon start at the office? So how long has this been going on? I hope the committee asks the candidate whether she was aware her employee was carrying a gun in the building. I would hope that the committee would ask the candidate whether she herself has been carrying a gun in the courthouse in that building in violation of state law. I think this is a serious issue. I think the committee should ask the candidate whether, if she is appointed permanently to be a judge, whether she would allow or personally carry a gun as a judge. The second critical job that I know you know a judge must do is ensure the fair and equitable administration of justice. There are several ways in which I believe this candidate is not qualified. And one of these ways, I think I'm glad to be speaking to you today because I'd like to flag this issue for you. Our governor has proposed to you 12 judges who you have appointed, 12. 8 of them have been prosecutors. I'm a defense attorney, and I'd like more defense attorneys to be appointed. But what gets lost in this conversation that's really important is what the rest of Vermont needs. The rest of Vermont needs judges with serious experience in other areas of law that are not criminal law. We absolutely need judges who understand custody, divorce, business law, contracts, administrative law. I made a list: evictions, foreclosures, consumer fraud cases, agency law. I myself have been I've been practicing and doing cases involving administrative law for the last 10 years, and it's complicated. And fortunately, I've practiced in front of some judges who knew a lot about it and who brought that experience to their role in the judiciary. You are about to have 4 vacancies that I'm aware of that have been made public this year. 4 judges are retiring, and you're going to have to fill those spots, and you're going to have to fill the spot that we're here for today. I ask you to please consider other candidates with broader experience. The people of Vermont deserve that. That precludes me from being a judge, what I'm saying, and it precludes Dave Slay. But we desperately need those judges. You are going to lose 4 judges with lots of civil experience who came to the role with civil experience, and you should stop the practice of appointing people with primarily criminal experience. This candidate, another aspect of the fair and equitable administration of justice is to get cases through the system. And I'm sure you're hearing a lot about it now because I've been reading about it in the paper. And so this particular candidate, you read my letter, and I gave you an article which explained that each year between 2016 and 2019, a state's attorney, Judge Barrett, filed many more cases than could be resolved in court. So Orleans County has an enormous backlog. It long predates the pandemic. People suffer, victims suffer, defendants suffer, people in the civil docket suffer when we have a backlog of cases that's this big. Lawyers suffer, court clerks suffer, and judges suffer. The whole system is groaning under this weight. Now, Attorney Slay was pretty persuasive to say that Judge Barrett is just using the tools that you all gave her, but it doesn't work that way in other counties. Other counties, prosecutors have used their discretion to move lots of cases into diversion, to not bring cases, and to resolve cases in ways that the defendants will accept with plea deals that are not onerous. I gave you some other information that in my packet that was emailed about this state's attorney's rate of closure of cases, and it's poor between 2016 and 2020. Yesterday I provided, and I'll provide you now, a little chart. Thank you. I'll let Marshall pass out the others. What this chart shows, there's front and back, 2020 and 2021, is that this state's attorney filed more cases per capita than almost all other prosecutors. So you can see in 2021, Rutland County has about 60,000 people in it. It's about twice the size of Orleans County. But in Orleans County, this prosecutor charged about as many cases. The reason these cases don't get closed is because Attorney Barrett has made it a practice of seeking the maximum penalties and offering settlements that require massive punishments that criminal defendants just can't bear to take. It doesn't happen this way in other counties. Attorney Slay is well aware that he did such a good job. He filed, and he can tell you the details, he filed at least 22 motions to dismiss cases for lack of speedy trial during the pandemic. And he won at least 20 of these motions. These were not, and Attorney Barrett fought them tooth and nail. She fought every one. These cases were not just pandemic cases, but these were charges that stem from 2017, 2018, 2019. And we're talking about fish and game violations, simple misdemeanors. In other counties, prosecutors worked hand in hand with defense attorneys and judges to get rid of quite a few similar types of cases. There's no reason for someone to fight tooth and nail to have a 2017 fish and game violation on the docket. It just needs to go to diversion or go away. As a female attorney, I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Slay that you cannot hold a person's spouse, a spouse's sins against their wife. Works both ways, right? You can't hold those things against a spouse. But what is troubling with respect to race in this case is that Attorney Barrett did, as a public official, go to the media to support her husband, who had been removed from his position, or was facing removal from his position for racist policing, ugly racist policing, not implicit bias, but open, horrible, racist stops. She told the newspaper that she thought he would be exonerated. He was not exonerated. He was removed from his job. The settlements to 2 separate Black families cost Vermonters tens of thousands of dollars. More recently, I saw in the paper a photograph of this candidate with Christina Nolan, and she was running for office. She was supporting that candidate, and they were pictured together in the paper. Why does this matter? Christina Nolan's entire platform as a prosecutor was based on these 1990s era war on drug policies that we know today are at the root of our system's racist outcomes. If you've been in this business, you've known all along that we have a problem with racist outcomes in the criminal justice system. I've known for all 18 years of my career here. The judiciary is just now coming to terms with that. I am from Randolph.
Yeah, how much longer do you have? We have a number of witnesses waiting, and we have to adjourn by 11:20.
2 minutes.
Okay.
The paper, my local paper, recently published a story about the Supreme Court traveling around now to talk, really for the first time, with the people of Vermont about race. And the justices said that they were surprised to learn about some of this data, and they advocated for a colorblind type legal system. But what we have to do to solve these problems is to take action. We need judges who are going to do something about the fact that Vermont sentences Black people to longer and harsher penalties than they do white people. It can't be colorblind. You have to address this head on. And so my question for the committee, my hope is for the committee, that you choose wisely with your judges, find out from them, what are they planning to do? What's their plan of action to actually remedy this situation? Is this a candidate who you want to go with as we attempt to move forward? In closing, I just want to say, I was in the courthouse in Orleans County on August 19th of this year and had a conversation in the hallway with Attorney Barrett, then State's Attorney Barrett. And she told me straight up that if she could make one change, what she would like to do was to eliminate jury trials, that she did not trust Vermonters to make decisions in those cases, and that it was just the thing that she liked the least about our system of justice. I have interviewed over 100 jurors about verdicts that I didn't like, I didn't agree with, and I can tell you almost uniformly that Vermonters are smart, thoughtful, open-minded, and diligent when they serve as jurors. And so I was very shocked when she was appointed or selected by the governor just 10 days later, having had that conversation. I noted it in my diary. I was so shocked at her belief about that. But I thank you for letting me go on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator
And-
Sears,
Yeah.
if we only have 10 minutes left, we want to let Judge Barrett respond to what's already been said so that while things are still fresh on the minds.
Well, I don't know how to deal with this.
Senator Sears?
Yeah.
We have until 11:30 technically to get on the floor. And if we, if we're a minute or two late getting to the floor, I think this is more important to.
Okay. Well, if the next two witnesses and then Attorney Barrett could come back. Excuse me, Judge Barrett. If we could hear from the state attorney, current state attorney in Orleans County, and then Edward Tilton. And if we can go to 11:30, that's fine.
Yeah.
People could be brief, please. I'm sorry that we're up against it.
Thank you. I will try and be quick. I am known to speak fast, but I will try and be quick. I do have copies of my letter in support of Judge Barrett being nominated here today. And so I've known Judge Barrett for more than 7 years. 7 years ago, I met her when she first took office as the Orleans County State's Attorney. I was a Superior Court clerk working for the family court, and we would usually park on the same parking lot. And I got to know Judge Barrett that way, and we'd have what I would call parking lot conversations in the mornings and talk about, she was very respectful, kind, and had always had keen interest in me as a person, where I was from, as a South African immigrant, and my future career and what I was working towards. And as soon as Judge Barrett found out that I took the bar exam and that I had passed it, she immediately offered me a position as a law clerk, saying, okay, Ms. Leyva, we will give you this opportunity as a law clerk while you transition, and hopefully we can transition you as a deputy. I had no hesitation accepting that position and being a part of the team. Over the years, I've watched her excel in all aspects in the duties of being a state's attorney. I was encouraged by the Honorable Judge Van Benzysen to watch Judge Barrett in the courtroom, watch her during trials and evidentiary hearings. She was intelligent, she knows the law, and hardworking, maintains a high ethical standard, and she exemplified the very best of the legal profession. So Judge Barrett employed me in 2018 as a law clerk. In 2019, I started as a deputy state's attorney. And as soon as I started as a deputy state's attorney, I was faced with several racial bias comments in the courtroom, outside of the courtroom, by defense attorneys. And in one particular incident, and I'm sorry, I will get emotional because it's something that will stick with me forever in this profession. And one specific incident where an attorney had said, while I was in the courtroom after bail arguments, while I stood up and said my argument, and her response was as if I was not in the room. And she said, and I quote, "It must be a language barrier in how things are phased with Ms. Leyva." That was clearly an attack on my accent. I walked up, it was after hours. I remember we went in a little over after 4:30. I walked up, I sat down and I said, "How much of this am I going to take? I need to let Judge Barrett know." I called her and I said, "Judge Barrett," at that time, Jen, this is what happened. And she was absolutely appalled. And she said to me, "We are going to take care of this." She requested a transcript, and she addressed the issue head on. She had written to the defense attorney, defendant general, and the response that she got from this defense attorney was that it is not my problem that Ms. Leyva cannot, and I quote, "cannot command the English language. English language is my first language." And so it wasn't just me that had issues. We had another attorney who is a Romanian immigrant, and she was yelled and screamed at in open court, in family court, by a defendant saying, "You need to learn how to speak English." And Judge Barrett again, and this attorney came out saying, "Oh my God, this just happened." I'm like, okay, you need to talk with Jen. And she again addressed the issues head on and wrote a letter, all of those things that I can provide to you. But she did write a letter to the court, she wrote a letter to the judge and addressed that issue. And so during that time, Judge Barrett was very supportive and has been an absolute advocate and zealously fought for me, fought for the other attorney. And so in 2019, that same year, my son had experienced some racial bias in school, and he came home and he sat down while we sat on the couch and he said to me, "Mommy, why are you brown? Mommy, why did you have to be brown? Why couldn't you just be white? Mommy, why are you from South Africa? Why couldn't you have just been born in America?" And I sat there speechless. Like, an attack on me is fine, but an attack on my child, and it has a mom, I had lost all confidence in being able to protect him. Here I am trying to move my career forward, while in the meantime, my child, and it's not just one incident that he has dealt with, several incidents. And the first thing I did was call Jennifer and I said, "I don't know what to do right now. I need out. I need to leave. I need to leave the state of Vermont. I can't deal with this. This is too much for me and my family, and for what? For my career." And one of the things she said to me, and will live with me forever, is like, "You need to stand up and you need to fight, and you need to make sure that you pave the way for other minorities and are able to do things that they would not be able to do. And you can do those things. You can educate the community. And these are the things that we are going to do." And we sat down and we came up with a game plan. And she said, "Okay, first things first, you're going to reach out to the superintendent and you're going to talk to him. If that doesn't work, you're going to reach out to the Department of Education. And if that doesn't work, you are going to reach out to the ACLU, because this is not okay." And again, not only was Jennifer a support for me, but for my children, and my son looked up to her. He, up until this day, Mom, she has been a great support for us. Eventually, I did move my son from that school because there were too many things going on. But some of the things that Jennifer had asked me to do was, go into the schools and talk to them. And so I did go into that school and I did speak to the children in 6th and 7th grade about South Africa and diversity. I did sit outside with the preschoolers and read a book with them, to be a presence, a woman of color, someone, who is not just like my son. Hey. And so that happened, and I can honestly say that my children will never forget Jennifer Barrett, that she has supported us as a family, and she has been there throughout this entire ordeal. I sit here before you today because Jennifer told me to stand up, and because as a mom, I just wanted to protect my child and protect my family and walk away. But instead, she had asked that she told me to stand up for what's right. And I am ever so thankful for her. I think Jennifer has created the only diverse office in the state attorney's office in the state of Vermont. She had 3 members of the LGBTQ community, me, a South African immigrant, my 2 other colleagues who are 2 Romanian immigrants, as well as an Asian American. So that was something she was so proud of, and something that we were proud of as an office. And so when looking at some of the letters that was written about Ms. Barrett, it's wholly inaccurate. She is someone who has fought for her immigrant attorneys and has really stood up and relentlessly did the right thing. And I think also she helped advocate to bring multiple additional diversity trainings to statewide yearly trainings, and she also took pride in the prosecution and looked at every case in its entirety. I think she's an ideal fit for the position of the Superior Court. I know that she's going to be a fair judge. And just reading some of the letters, some of the things that was said, which is wholly inaccurate by Attorney Kelly Green, who had, again, in her testimony today at request.
I'm going to urge you not to
Okay.
let Judge Barrett comment on other testimony. I kind of urge you not to get into.
Judge too.
Okay.
If you,
Okay. All right. I think that is all I have to say today. Thank
If
you.
you have any written testimony, you can also provide that.
I have,
Or
yeah.
anything
And
beyond this, but
yeah.
yes, we have this.
So I do have the transcript of, and a letter relating to my incident, and I have the letter relating to the other attorney. I can send that to Peggy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have time, Phil, for Mr. Tilton?
I think we do, and then regretfully with Jennifer Barrett's testimony, we might have to have that another day, but I think we can do Ember Tilton.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tilton,
Good morning.
morning.
My name is Ember Tilton. I was licensed to practice law in 2014. One of my first assignments was to handle a conflict contract in Bennington County. And that was where I had interactions with candidate Barrett. And that would be the only interactions I've had with her. I haven't litigated against her since then. She's been in Orleans County, haven't had any cases up there. I was struck at the time by how she would use procedural rules to accomplish certain results. She seemed very result oriented, was usually looking for jail time, had a hard time negotiating settlements. And this is not the case with prosecutors in other counties. I've worked in Windham County, Windsor County, Rutland County, Washington County, Lamoille County, and I wouldn't be here for any of the prosecutors in any of those offices. The only other prosecutor I can think of in the state who I would take the time to oppose would be Erica Marthage, who is her former supervisor. She also made things personal, and that's a reason I don't think that she is fit for the bench. She seemed to have it out for me. She filed a ethics complaint against me with numerous counts. It's easy to file complaints and just list rules that a person has violated. It's much more difficult to defend them. You have to go through the facts. It's your license that's on the line. Take your time. And it was a way to try to I don't know, it was a personal attack. I don't know what else to call it. And she seemed to have that same personal approach to clients. She didn't like them. She made it clear she thought that they were bad. And she would use habitual offender enhancements to make high offers. She would use hold us without bail and delay tactics to pressure settlements. What she didn't like was trials. She didn't want to go to trial. And Mr. Slay said that this was tools the legislature gave her that she could use as a prosecutor, but that's not completely the law. Those are tools, but they need to be used with discretion. And I want to direct the committee's attention to Vermont Rules of Professional Conduct 3.8. And there's a rule about what prosecutors' responsibilities are separate from other attorneys. In the comment 1, it says a prosecutor has a responsibility of a minister of justice and not simply as an advocate. The responsibility carries with it a specific obligation to see that a defendant is accorded procedural justice and that guilt is decided on the basis of sufficient evidence. I never saw her do this. She didn't do it. She was against trying to get to trial. She would do everything she could to reach the result that she wanted from the very beginning of a case, no matter how the evidence changed, to try to get a conviction, to try to get jail time. And she doesn't have the impartiality or thoughtfulness that we should see on the bench. Her record doesn't reflect it. The experiences other defense attorneys have had with her doesn't reflect this. She's aggressive, she's results oriented, and she doesn't have the type of compassion or impartiality that we want to see from the bench. When other prosecutors prosecute harshly or are aggressive towards my clients, they often will come to me and say, well, that guy just doesn't like me, he's not being fair. And it's fairly common. I would say it happens at least every month where I'm defending prosecutors to my clients and saying, no, that's the law. This is how things work. He's like this with everybody, or she's like this with everybody. This is, how things work. They're allowed to do this. And I'll try to reassure them that this is how the justice system is supposed to work. This is part of law enforcement, which is necessary. We have to have law enforcement, right? So, and try to let them see the situation objectively. That wasn't possible with my clients who candidate Barrett was prosecuting. There was no way to tell them that this was fair, that this is what prosecutors do, that this is normal, and to see the situation objectively. They felt oppressed. They lost faith in the judicial system, and people who may end up in front of her, if she's on the bench, will feel the same way. People will lose trust in Vermont.
We're up against it. We're going to need to cut you off now. Is there any very quick thing you've yet to say?
No, I think that covers it. I was just getting to the end, but that's the those are the issues. And I think the fact that she filed a meritless complaint against me highlights how she wasn't approaching cases on the merits. And I wanted to highlight that for the committee, and that this is not a person who, or a litigant or a litigator who likes to use the system the way it was intended, but rather looks for end games around things. And a judge would have even more power to do that, and the harm would be exponential. So thank you for hearing my testimony today.
Attorney Tilton, could you, if you're willing, could you tell us what the outcome was of the complaint that was filed against you?
Yeah, there was no merit found.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. And we'll be back to you at the next time this